cool. I'm glad I timed that one out perfectly.
Hell yeah.
How you doing,
Yeah,
buddy?
I'm
It's
doing
been a
great.
minute.
Just great. How are you?
Oh, I'm dandy. And hopefully we get some good news in the next couple of weeks. As people can see by the title, we're going to talk about the DC situation at Oklahoma because it's been, what, 2, 3 weeks? I don't know. It's felt like a lifetime almost since Zach Alley left for West Virginia, and we still do not know who the official defensive coordinator for Oklahoma is. There's plenty of speculation as to where Oklahoma's targeting their efforts. Excuse me, but we're going to talk more about that while people are kind of rolling in here. I think you mentioned wanting to start with the playoffs. Were you thinking NFL or college playoffs before we get
Okay, I
into
guess,
defensive coordinator talk?
yeah, I guess either one, right? I think the college football national championship game is not going to be that great. I'm glad Ohio State did what they had to do and took care of Texas. That would have been awful. We can't have Texas win one before we win one. That was kind of like it's sad to be at that point of a season where you're you're winning based off another team's loss, but that's what it is for us right now. I think all of us were pretty happy when Ohio State beat Texas. I'm not afraid to admit that I was jumping up and down. Don't have to worry about them. Notre Dame on the other side, they beat Indiana and then they went and beat Georgia minus Beck, but still, well, still good. And then Penn State. I think Notre Dame's had a lot easier road to that title game than Ohio State has. Ohio State, what they beat Tennessee, they beat Texas. Um, can't remember who else they beat, but they look good. And I think Notre Dame's not very good. I think it's going to be Ohio State by 2 touchdowns.
Ohio State definitely had, I would say, the hardest road to the finals, even when you compare it to anyone. Whoever would have won the other side of the championship bracket. They played Tennessee, which not that hard. They made that one look pretty easy. And honestly, they were probably, I know ranked wise, they were right there with them, but Tennessee wasn't great. They got
They're a
smoked.
lot better than Indiana.
Maybe you can say that, but the SEC didn't look good this year, and at least the Big Ten had very competitive teams in bowl games, and now they have one of the teams representing them in the national championship. They played Oregon. They made that one look easy, but Oregon beat them in the regular season, so they got revenge for that loss earlier in the year. They beat Texas, who I think Texas, anyone that was looking at it objectively, even if you're not an Oklahoma fan, just a college football fan, that was Texas's first real challenge. I mean, I guess Arizona State was a pretty legitimate challenge, or it became at least a legitimate challenge. People were saying it was going to be a cupcake game for Texas, and it became a good game, probably the best college football game up until that Ohio State Texas game. Like just viewing wise, it wasn't a blowout. Arizona State damn near won it if it wasn't for just a
Should have won it.
terrible, terrible defensive call there on fourth and
13.
2013. Yeah, it
Fourth.
was just bad. So then they got tested by a legitimate team and they ended up losing. Now Texas definitely had their chances, but now we've got Ohio State, which is definitely the best team in the country. You can't argue that. So far, they have been the best team in the country. But then I think Notre Dame is good. They definitely had an easier road to the finals. That's not an argument. But they're good enough to at least compete. They're currently, what was it, 8.5 point
It's 8.5.
dogs,
Yeah.
which I could see. I don't think I see a world where Notre Dame wins it, but I can definitely see them keeping it close, at least for the majority of the game, because they have the style of football that gives fits to Ohio State. I mean, the two times that they lost this season was Michigan, who controlled the ball mainly on the ground and played excellent defense, and Oregon, who controlled the ball and played excellent defense. I'm pretty sure they had a pretty solid running game that game too against Ohio State. So if Notre Dame can execute their offensive game plan, it might be closer than a lot of people expect it to be.
Uh, Ohio State 8.5 is the easiest thing ever. I think it's a two touchdown game, but I guess we'll find out in about a week. I also just hate Notre Dame. I mean, I don't like Ohio State either, but I can't stand Notre Dame. I hope they lose by 1,000. But that is what it is. We got some OU basketball going on. It started off great. 13-0, and then you go to Alabama. They didn't look great there. Um, then you played A&M really really well. I don't. You literally found a way to lose that game. That was awful. That was hard to watch. That was a game that you were up 18 in, I think, in the second half. They were without their best player, one of their best players, and you found a way to let them come not only close, but to come all the way back and actually win it from the end, which is tough. And then I think that game against Georgia on whatever day it was over the weekend, I think it was a little bit questionably called, but that it is what it is. You're 0-3 in conference play right now.
I mean, I think if anything, Oklahoma basketball needs to find a way to become independent because they can't win in conference under Porter Moser. And that's been the story the entire time he's been a coach at Oklahoma. The Big 12 and now the SEC. It's only 3 games in, but like you said, you got demolished by Alabama in the first game. And Alabama's a good team, but they made it look easy, especially rebounding. A&M, you said it. The only way you can describe that game, you found a way to lose that. You squandered a guy's just breakout night. I can't remember the guy's name right now. Sure you can, but he was
Bryson
just on
Denine,
fire. Yeah, it was his breakout night. I think he had what, like 30 something
something.
points.
Yeah, he hit I think 10 threes or at least. So I mean at least 30. He was on fire in the first half. I mean the dude scored like I think it was 17 points in 5 minutes or some crazy stat. Like he couldn't miss.
Yeah, it's absurd. You can't lose that. And then I didn't watch the Georgia game, but I officiating can definitely be dumb sometimes, but you can't just blame the officiating on every loss. Sometimes you gotta figure out a way to win if you're a good team, and I don't think at this point I think Oklahoma's good enough to answer Jimmy's question, good enough to make the tournament. They're gonna win games in conference, but are they good enough to make a run in the tournament? I don't think so.
It depends on when they get hot. If they get hot again, late February, that's right where you want to be. If they play a good SEC tournament, I think the encouraging part is unfortunately as bad as that A&M game was, is you should have won that game. So that's one loss that you should have won. You're in that game with Georgia the whole way through. You kind of fall apart late there, but only one of the losses of the three this season has been horrible, and that was the Bama game. I think that just happens sometimes in the sport. Bama had a really good night. We had a really bad night. It is what it is, and that's not to take anything away from Alabama. They beat the hell out of us, but I mean sometimes in basketball that's just it's the way it is. The shot doesn't fall for you, and it falls for the other team. I think that was kind of one of those nights for Oklahoma. Um, they've got a big one coming up on Wednesday. They got Texas coming into the LNC. Texas is not as good in basketball as they are in football. I think this is a game that Oklahoma can definitely grab. And sometimes it just takes one. If you grab the Texas game, a rivalry game, Red River, whatever, you beat Texas, maybe you can go on a roll, on a run here. And then you got South Carolina on Saturday, which both should be winnable games.
Yeah, I thought Georgia would be a winnable game. So I mean, I'll just refer to you. I know you said it was kind of an officiating dilemma. So to an extent that can't be the complete excuse. You gotta execute, put the ball in the hole, and it sounds like they did it. We'll see how the next few games go. You can't lose to Texas, even if they're bad. I think in
Well,
any
it's
sport
not
that
even
you
that they're
play them.
bad. They're just not as good as some of the other teams we've seen so far.
Well, and they're usually a pretty solid basketball team. So if that at the end of the day, that's still a rivalry. It may not be the level of football when it comes to the rivalry, but you still want to win that rivalry game. It still means something. I mean, we see it means something in softball too. I think if anything, it goes Red River in football, and then Red River in softball might be a close number two, and how tightly those games are played, regardless of the level of talent on both of those teams. But yeah, basketball just needs to figure their shit out. You can't, and Porter Moser, it's hard to say he's on the hot seat, but because
I don't
he
even think it's
did
hard to
start
say
so
that.
well,
Yeah,
huh?
I would say I think he is on the hot seat. I don't think it's hard to say. I mean, as much as you want the guy to succeed, it's this year four for him at the program. They have zero tournament appearances so far. I think they got robbed at least once in his tenure. Meaning, I think they should have been a tournament team, but it is what it is. At the end of the day, they didn't get in. I think this year, and I get it, the SEC. That was one thing we talked about when everything was announced. Like, it's going to be harder in football, right? It's going to be harder probably in baseball, but in basketball, the Big 12 has been a pretty good powerhouse there in terms of college basketball, and it feels like the year that we switch over to the SEC, all of a sudden SEC hoops has figured it out, and they're nasty. You look at, like, 4 or 5 of the top 25 are all SEC. Florida, I think, is number one. Tennessee was number one, just got their ass kicked by Florida, so they probably fell to 4 or 5. There's a lot of
Auburn
really
solid,
quality. Yeah,
Arkansas
Arkansas, yeah,
solid,
Calipari.
Kentucky solid.
There's a lot of good basketball teams in the SEC right now.
Yeah. And as long as Oklahoma can just not get demolished in conference play, I don't know if I would say 500 is okay, but win more than you lose in conference and make it. I mean, I guess it really doesn't matter. Win the SEC championship and you're in. You can suck, but if you win that championship game, you're gonna be in. Um, but let's shift our focus for the last 20 minutes here or so to the defensive coordinator position at Oklahoma. Before we do all that stuff, guys, thank you for showing up. It was a very last second decision to do a live here. So we appreciate you guys for watching and joining. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, all that jazz. We're going to try to do more lives a little bit more often through the off season. Um, I think they're a little bit more fun to interact with you guys in real time, and it lends a little bit more to our schedules as well. So win-win for everybody. All right, Oklahoma still looking for the defensive coordinator. Jeremy, it might he might be hired if it's not Jim Knowles. Uh, that that seems to be where all the speculation is pointing to. The Ohio State defensive coordinator, ex Oklahoma State defensive coordinator, Jim Knowles, is apparently the top candidate or the top target for Oklahoma in that defensive coordinator vacancy. Brandon, you and I have talked about it a lot, so I'm going to let you take the floor here. Is this actually in the realm of possibility, or is it just a pipe dream at this point?
I mean, I think Bobby here brings up a good point. I think Jim Knowles would be awesome, right? He's a guy that has done it at a high level. He's been good. Obviously, we're homers. We're diehard Sooner fans. We would take an Oklahoma job over any job in the country. That's where we would want to be. But if you look at it objectively, what does Oklahoma have right now to offer that Ohio State doesn't? I guess if we find a way to increase his salary or whatever we got to do there, a salary jump is always nice. Maybe he just wants to come back to the state of Oklahoma. But I mean, let's say it does work out and you do bring him in. How does he gel with the current defense? I get that he runs a similar system to what Brent Venables does, so maybe it's not going to be quite the adjustment or quite the overhaul or whatever. But the defense was really good last year running the Brent Venables system. No matter who's calling the plays, it was Brent Venables' defense, and it worked out very, very well. I think you want to keep it very similar to that. If Jim Knowles is hired, is he going to have 100% control of the defense? Is Brent Venables going to take a step back and let Jim Knowles call the plays entirely? Is he installing a new system? There's a lot of question marks, I think, that go into this if Jim Knowles is the guy. That being said, I think it would be a big hire.
I think player wise, and who said it there? Bobby. I think player wise, Oklahoma's only downfall is you don't have Caleb Downs. But you have a defensive line that has young and returning talent all throughout that defensive line that he would potentially have for multiple years outside of his edge rushers. There's an argument that you could have if he were to be here, you would definitely have David Stone, Jaden Jackson, and a few interior guys coming back that would have been at that point 3 year starters. If he came next season and the season after, you'd have your linebackers. Kobe McKenzie probably 6th round past next season. Kip Lewis maybe 6th round past next season. We'll see how that retention. That's kind of where college football is really leaning towards. I know everyone focuses on paying kids in the transfer portal, but if anything, you're paying kids to make sure they don't go into the NFL draft early. You want them to use all 4 years of their eligibility. You bring back Peyton Bowen more than likely after that 1 year. Maybe RSJ, I think you would have one more season because he did redshirt his freshman year. So you would have a lot of returning talent in both first and second year under Jim Knowles. It's just Caleb Downs is not like that. That guy is on a different level of football. He is already a 1st round draft pick. If he were to enter the draft tomorrow, that's not an argument. Oklahoma doesn't have a Caleb Downs on the team right now, but you have plenty of talent to work with. I think the one thing you do have a point in bringing up is the money. I think I looked it up. He is the 3rd highest paid assistant in all of college football right now, getting paid $2.2 million, if I remember the correct stat. The LSU defensive coordinator is the highest paid at 2.5. So you would have to make him the highest paid, but you also have to go so high over that Ohio State doesn't see the value in paying him that much to bring him back, which I don't know if that number exists out there because he has done so much for that Ohio State defense. He's recruited for him. Those linebackers play well. They have plenty of linebackers to continue to refill and that need for him. I mean, Oklahoma's battled them for a couple linebackers in the last couple of years, and they've been able to win out. I'm sure partially because of him, partially because Laurinaitis is also there coaching linebackers. But if you can find a way to bring him here, that that is a big step in the right direction because now Brent Venables doesn't have to focus on being a defensive coordinator anymore. He is like if he focuses on that, then that shows that he isn't a head coach. If you were to somehow find a way to bring Jim Knowles in, you can't keep just focusing on the defense. I know that's your favorite thing to do. And I mean, you even see Marcus Freeman sometimes. He was the
He's
defensive
never going
coordinator
to
for.
completely turn the keys over to anybody on defense. He's going
You
to have.
have to.
It's
Nick
never going to
Saban
happen.
did it. Nick Saban did it. Kirby Smart has done it. You have to trust your coordinators. If you don't trust your coordinators, then you're not a head coach. Like at the end of the day, the best head coaches, whether they like it or not, end up having to give up that responsibility. I'm sure you can. I mean, you have to be. You want to be there. I would assume we've seen videos of Marcus Freeman still going and practicing with the linebackers, but that Notre Dame program, regardless of what some people may think, has been able to succeed and gotten to the playoffs, even in this 12 team system where Oklahoma hasn't put a consecutive winning seasons together under Brent Venables. I think
Yeah, Notre Dame gets
that
the
still has
best,
something
but
to
they
say.
play Northern Illinois and Eastern Connecticut
I
and
don't think
West Wyoming
if you gave
State
the same
every
schedule,
week.
Oklahoma didn't do that the first season either, and there hasn't been a losing season under Marcus Freeman. And the
And
excuses are out there for Oklahoma fans to do it, but outside of this year, Brent Venables had two Big 12 schedules, and he had one losing season and one winning season. And that one winning season, there were two really bad games coached. It wasn't by him specifically, but two bad games that he shouldn't have won. He shouldn't have lost in
uh,
that schedule, right?
I feel like no matter who he brings in, if Knowles is the guy, Knowles is the guy that I think everybody wants. That's the home run hire, I guess, if you will. But Brent Venables is still going to have to say in the defense, and I think he should. He's clearly been really good at fixing that defense. What's the point of just giving the defense entirely away? So then, what does he do? If let's say, and you're right, if he just gives up the defense entirely, he just stops caring about it, doesn't look at it at all. So what are you suggesting?
He doesn't need to stop caring. He just needs to focus on the football team at the University of Oklahoma, not the
Defense
defense of the University of Oklahoma. Yeah, but you're saying he shouldn't give up the reins of the defense. I'm saying give them up, but look at it like from an outsider's perspective. You're no longer the defensive coordinator. You got to look at it and be like, "Hey Jim, this is what I'm saying. Your linebackers are out of position." Like his knowledge is so vast and great because of what he did that he should be able to tell his defensive coordinator, "This is where I'm seeing the holes. Now go out there and fix them for me." And maybe he can get involved, but he needs to do that on the offense too, because that's I think that's where he's missing a lot of being a head coach. You have to look at your team, not just go focus on the defense and say, hey, offensive coordinator, I'm never going to talk to you because I 100% trust what you're going to do with my offense. And then at the end of the day, that also puts the offensive coordinator position where, like, if he fails, he's the sitting duck and he's going to get canned. And I mean, Brett Venables at this point can't afford having a bad offensive coordinator, but he can't be in a position where he's just sitting out there and saying, this isn't to our standard. Like, okay, well, what is your standard? Because you haven't held it for 2 of your 3 seasons here.
So Boom's comment here, I think, is a good one. This one right here, I'll pull it up. First of all, Boom, thanks for the comment. I do agree with you on Joe John Finley. I think me and Jose talk about Joe John Finley probably more than we'd like to in a given week. I'd say it's a topic of conversation 4 to 5 times a week. Yeah, Joe John Finley, I don't know. I don't know what's going on there. It feels like that guy can just do whatever he wants. I don't get it. He's not really great in the recruiting battles. The tight end room was terrible last season, but I mean, a lot of the offense was terrible last season. But the tight ends were no better. Joe John, I don't get it. Maybe there's a plan, or maybe something's going to get going, or whatever. But right now, yeah, Joe John Finley, I 100% agree with. Bad. DeMarco Murray, I've had this conversation with people too. I think, in a very bad football team last season, a very bad offense last season, I think the running back room was like maybe the only bright spot, a consistent bright spot. I think Xavier Robinson is a guy who really came on. I get him not playing in the bowl game is questionable, but Xavier Robinson's the guy that came on. I think Taylor Tatum flashed. He looked like he's going to be a player as soon as he stops dropping the ball every run, and I think Javante Barnes even at times was good. DeMarco Murray, I see it a lot, and I don't quite get it. I feel like DeMarco Murray was actually pretty solid last season. I feel like he's a solid recruiter. I don't get the DeMarco Murray hate. And Bill Beaton, though, he's been consistent for most of his career. He had a bad season last year. I think they came on a little bit late, especially the left side that you talk about all the time, Hose. I think, with Ozida and Holland, they started playing well, but I get that Coach B wasn't great this season. He's been great in the past. I think he got some big time recruitments in Fasusi and Faji. I would also give Coach B another year. So of 2 of the 3, I'm going to defend here. Joe John, I think his own mom probably can't defend him right now.
Bagman, I think, has, I mean, he said it perfectly. Joe John is stealing money from Oklahoma right now. Someone needs to tell him, if you want to remain the tight ends coach here, you've got to donate your entire salary to NIL, because at this point, let's look at his room. The performance was by far the worst. In a bad offense, yours was the worst part of it as a tight end's room and his responsibility. He'll lose Bauer Sharp, which, you know what? I was a big hater all season. I'll admit I was the one that was shitting on him on Twitter through our Two Plane Sports Twitter account. But I think,
thank you for saying that, by the way. I mean, you're saying it now when our lives not as jumping as we've had in the past, but because I've got attacked for your comments towards our tight ends, towards Joe John Finley, because I'm kind of the louder one on the show, but people just be like, "Yeah, nice job, Brandon. Way to shit on this guy on Twitter." You just admitted it wasn't me. I was never the one
it was
shitting on.
me. It was 100% me, and I'll take full credit for it. He sucks, and but I will say this in Bauer's defense, looking at it hindsight, he was put in a lot of shitty positions. He was the most consistent player on a terrible offense, most consistent in regards to availability and for this offense, and he was asked to do something that a guy that was supposed to run a sub 4.240, and he probably runs a 4.6, which, you can't have a 4.6 guy try to run jet sweeps with behind a very bad offensive line and a very dysfunctional offense. You got to figure something else out. But then he leaves. Okay, well, you have a really promising 5-star giant human being that's supposed to be, yeah, and the kid admitted to it. He put himself behind in his development, whatever that means, whether it means he wasn't studying film how he was supposed to, training how he was supposed to. whatever it was, he took responsibility for his own actions, which is a great thing to see. But Joe John Finley should have been like, okay, this kid is maturing. Let me invest as much time as I possibly can into this guy because he might be my tight end one. Instead, he's like, you know what? I have this kid that seems to be figuring himself out. I have another guy that's been on my roster for now going on 4 seasons and seems to finally be getting healthy. So I may be able to play him. I have a second year guy in McIntyre that is putting on weight, which was what we needed him to. Instead of focusing on these three guys to develop, I'm going to go find some bargains. You know, when it comes to having to pay for NIL, I'll find some bargain deals in the transfer portal for guys that really haven't shown any production. And when I try to sell this in the media, I'll say, well, we needed experience. What experience did you bring in, brother? You've got two guys that I think both had one catch in their collegiate career so far, and another guy that was okay. But to say that he was going to be an upgrade to anyone in this current tight end room, I think is ridiculous, to say the
Yeah,
least.
I mean, I'd like to see Devon Mitchell play. I think I was going to say the same thing about this season. It's hard to blame Joe John for him not playing this year. When the kid was on Twitter the day after the Navy loss, pretty much said it's my fault. I was messing up, whatever. And I feel bad talking bad about Joe John Finley so much because he's a guy that I guarantee you he cares. He's a guy that wore the uniform. He probably wants the University of Oklahoma to be good more than we do. But he's just he has I think he has the want, but it appears that he's definitely in over his head. I feel like we're never going to win a big recruiting battle for a tight end, whether at the high school ranks or in the portal, as long as he's running the show there. It just feels like that tight end position is going to be just stuck second place for as long as he's the guy running the show. Maybe it gets a little bit better with Coach Arbuckle now calling the offense. Maybe he has some ideas for that room and how he wants to use it. But it just feels at the moment that JJF is just kind of having him stuck, and it's not getting any better.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. I don't feel bad for dogging on that guy because he's been shit for 3 years now. It's not a one time thing where his room was terrible. It's been multiple years now, basically since Brent Venables was in. I can't remember when he was hired, but I can't. His last good tight end was Braden Willis, and Braden Willis wasn't an amazing tight end. He was good, and he was definitely a fun Sooner to watch. But
He was
you're
good.
not looking at Braden Willis and saying, "Man, God, I wish my team drafts him in the second round of the NFL draft."
He
I
still plays in the
Most
league.
people won't even say it. I hope he gets drafted. You're going to be excited if he's a UDFA, and he's good. And it seems like he's playing well for the Niners when
I don't know.
he
I don't
gets
know if he
time.
plays, but he's good enough to stay on the roster for 3 years
Yeah,
now.
I mean, yeah, he's been on the roster for the same team, so he's got to be good enough where like they trust him. If you were to have to go out there, he's been in some games, good blocker, I guess, in the NFL, which is good. I mean, you take it how you can when you get to that level of football. But holy shit, brother, your room sucks, and there's no light at the end of the tunnel that says it's gonna get any better right now.
So you said you don't feel bad, and whatever. But can you imagine if Baker Mayfield became the quarterback coach 10 years from now, and he is the equivalent of JJF as a coach? Is he going to get the same kind of slander that Joe John Finley's going to have? Because I feel like that would be hard to do. Baker Mayfield's like everybody's favorite Sooner ever. I think I mean, I'd love for Baker Mayfield to be a coach at Oklahoma because it's Baker Mayfield. That'd be awesome. But that's the fear that part of me doesn't want him to do it because what if he's just bad as a coach and then the fan base turns on him? I don't know that it would happen. I think he could be awful as a QB coach or whatever, and I don't think anybody turns on him.
I think that I mean this is an exaggeration, and I obviously it's just for fun. But if Baker Mayfield walked into Norman and committed murder, he could get away with it because he's Baker Mayfield. I don't think he can do any wrong in the city of Norman. Um, So yeah, to answer your question, I think he could suck and keep his job forever because he's Baker Mayfield. Probably a decade is when people start to cut the ties. That's a bit of a stretch, but yeah, that's but Joe John Finley is not Baker Mayfield. No one loves Finley like he is Baker Mayfield. No one loves him like he's freaking Sam Dar or not Sam Darnold, Sam Bradford. Like there's levels to how you really appreciate a player, and maybe I'm just not old enough to remember what he was, but I don't recall him being like a historically good tight end for the University of Oklahoma. It's probably good.
I think he was.
I think I'm sure he was good, but historically good is different than good. Yeah, and someone can correct me. Please correct me if I'm wrong.
I think he
I don't want
was.
to
I think he
undersell
was
him.
all Big 12 and shit. But I mean, I didn't watch him either. But no, he was all right. Yeah, you're right. Career stats are 62 catches for 775 yards and 10 touchdowns through 4 years. Season high, 290 and four touchdowns.
I mean, not bad. I think if he could
But I
coach
think
a
he
tight
was
end to
2007.
result to
When was Jermaine Gresham at OU?
that's a good
Or
question.
Gresham, not Johnson. Uh, Jermaine Gresham was at OU 06, 07, 08. So two of his years he was playing with Jermaine Gresham, and I feel like that is to put him. I mean, Jermaine Gresham was the guy, so he was a solid tight end too.
I mean, he wasn't that good. He's not someone that like he's not DeMarco Murray. Like at least DeMarco Murray, you can be like that guy was actually good enough where he can maybe suck for a little bit and get away with the poor performance because he brought something to the university. He was a fantastic football player in his own right in college and the NFL. Joe John Finley ain't that. He was average, like Jimmy said, at best in his collegiate career. And some say if he can't do coach, he can't do either. Maybe he should step in a front office role. Maybe he's really good at money and he can advise on that part. But I'm tired of this bullshit.
Uh,
But going
there's a
back to
long
the
way to
defensive
go.
coordinator
There's a
stuff,
lot.
real quick, then my last
Do
comment
what?
on the defensive coordinator thing. My last comment on the defensive coordinator thing, I think because we are so deep in to the playoffs and where things stand with Oklahoma's defensive coordinator search, to me, it does feel like Oklahoma's going to take a giant shot at actually trying to get Jim Knowles. If that shot lands, is up in the air, and some may say a far-fetched dream, but you've gotten. I mean, the national championship is 1 week from today. If 1 week from today we still don't have a defensive coordinator, Oklahoma is setting up to take a giant shot at making him their next defensive coordinator. If it lands is a different question, but that seems to be what Oklahoma is doing because there's no sign of them hiring Wes Goodwin or anyone else at this point.
Yeah, no, I think Jim Knowles is the target. Without having, I mean, I don't know, but I feel like he's the target. They're holding out. I feel like I agree with you. I think we're going to give our best push at least. Whatever, whether that's a salary raise, whether that's a maybe an assistant head coaching title, which seems to get a lot of people to want to come over. Something. I think we'll definitely give our best effort to get him from Columbus into Norman. Don't know if it happens or not. Hopefully, he's also interested in Oklahoma. But I think if not, Sam Goodwin appears like a guy, or I think maybe even promoting Brandon Hall would work better. He's a guy that he was a DC. I think at smaller programs like Troy and stuff, but he turned Troy's defense around. He understands the Brent Venables system. He's a guy that's been on staff for 3 or 4 years now, so he's a guy that should be trusted within the coaching staff. I think if you don't get Jim Knowles, I would be a big fan of just promoting Brandon Hall.
I agree. We'll see what happens. I think we find out who the defensive coordinator is in 2 weeks. End of January is probably where they land because I can't remember the timeline in which they start all their workouts and all of that jazz, but I don't believe they've quite started like full on winter workouts. Think there's still a little bit of time because school is about to get started again. It might have been today, so they get a little bit of time after classes start.
Yeah, I don't know. It should be fun, but I agree with that timeline about 2 weeks, and then we'll have something to talk about more. Hopefully, we all like the hire. Hopefully, I mean, there's a long way to go before next football season. Still, I think Oklahoma still has a good chance to be really really good next season. But let's just see how this offseason plays out. Still some time to go.
Let's see. Let's see. Well, we appreciate you guys watching. We're gonna wrap it up there so we can go watch the Vikings beat the Rams ass
Go
over the
Rams!
next few hours. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, turn on the notification bell. As I said earlier, we're going to try to do a few more lives. Just more fun to interact with you guys live. And
We'll do some
honestly,
better planning for the
also,
next one.
yeah, better planning for the next one. Maybe we might just start doing Mondays weekly, and then work around and do some spontaneous ones during the week because these are a good time. All right, we appreciate you guys joining us. We'll see you next time.